So the topic for this video, and this video will actually be for Friday, is enlightenment as a journey, not as a destination. So the chofetz Chaim, which in Hebrew means the one who loved life, and it's actually because of a lot of the Torah scholars were named after their books or their sort of, I want to call it a motto, but sort of different references. So the chofetz Chaim shares about a famous parable where the king takes the most misanthropic, sour-faced man in the kingdom and appoints him as head of the orphanage. He was the one who had to pour milk for the little children, soothe their hurts, calm their crying, and read them their bedtime stories. The king required him not only to fulfill the role, but to win the children's hearts. If he failed, he would be doomed. The man did as ordered, at first with terrible resentment, but little by little, the kindness he was forced to perform began making small inroads into his heart. He began to appreciate the children's smiles and take pride in his ability to care for them. He became what he did. He became a giver. The Tamid taanit 1:4 relates a story that sheds much light. One year during Rabbi Abahu's lifetime, a terrible drought struck the land, and all the prayers of the generations Torah scholars were to no avail. One night, Rabbi Abahu received a heavenly message in the form of a dream saying Pentakaka should pray, as in, if the infamous sinner named Pentakaka beseeches God for rain, his prayers will be answered. Everyone called him this because he committed 5 grievous sins daily, and in Greek, Pentakaka means 5 evils. Right after he prayed, rain began to fall. Bewildered, Rabbi Abahu asked him what he did for a living, and Pentakaka replied he operated a brothel, explaining he hired prostitutes, 2 set up a theater where they entertained men, 3 carried the women's clothing into the bathhouse, 4 clapped and danced before them, and 5 played musical instruments for their pleasure. According to human standards of judgment, this man was completely wicked. Rabbi Abahu kept investigating until he discovered that Pentakaka once sold his bed to save a poor woman from becoming a prostitute. In the merit of this moral deed, God accepted his prayers more readily than Rabbi Abahu. When the rabbis realized that the sinner saved them, they understood they need to explore further and find good in all of his deeds, and so they found a good reason to evoke merit on him. Through his sinful acts, he prevented many Jewish women from getting involved in prostitution. Zohar, chapter 21, from Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, chapter 21 of the parsha tzav, number 154. He who has not taken a wife is defective and is not worthy that blessings would be present in the world by him or by him to others. 155. There are 5 kinds of blood in the blood of a menstrual period, all of them impure. There are also 5 kinds of bloods that are pure. I added the word also, but it's in the Zohar again, tzav, chapter 22, this time, part number 159. The supernal fire is called the throne of mercy, and the lower fire is dubbed the throne of judgment. Rashi says 80% of the Jewish nation died in Egypt in the plague of darkness. That's on Shemos 10:22, and did not leave in the Exodus. Shemos is Exodus. Midrash tanchuma beshalach 1 quotes Rabbi Nehurai as saying that only one of every 5,000 Jews left in Egypt. So first we had 1 out of 5, 2 out of 10, which is 1 out of 5. Now it says no, it's actually 1 in every 5,000. And in the Talmud, Sanhedrin 111a, it says that the ratio is actually 1 in 300,000. Still, the sinners perished only in the 9th plague and were able to witness the progression of the redemption as the first 8 plagues occurred. Rabbi Ginsburg says Enlightenment argues for superiority of the intellect, and Romanticism champions the superiority of the heart. In ancient Greece, Dionysian, which was passion-driven, versus Apollonian cultures, which were intellect-driven. So Dionysian culture versus Apollonian culture, so passion versus intellect. Hasidus, from Hasidism, made a distinction between 2 levels of emotion called the exterior of the heart and the interior of the heart. The only way to truly transition to the heart's interior is to distance from the emotional plane, which is the external heart, to the intellect, to the interior of the heart. Stop seeking. How do you do this? You have to stop seeking exciting experiences, mystical experiences, etc. Instead, focus the mind on an intellectual contemplation. Instead of passionately wanting more, activating the intellect as a prerequisite to rising above the superficial reactions of the heart. And even if we try to use various methods of calming the emotional storms of the external heart, like breathing exercises, clearing the mind, increasing self-awareness, without the intellect, we will only reach different levels of the exterior heart, which can be deceptively pleasant to behold, but it's an illusion because we must go through the intellect, which can seem farther from the heart's exterior than the inner heart, but it's the only way. So in other words, we might feel like in order to get to those more subtle, refined emotions, we have to go from our heart, which is the more superficial parts of the heart, versus the deep parts of the heart, those immediate passions. But actually we have to go into the mind for a moment before we can go back deeper into the heart. So in other words, emotionalism is not the same thing as emotion, and intense is not the same thing as profound. Inner emotion is like a still small voice that can be heard only after the subsiding wind, earthquake, and fire happens of the external emotion. The danger is forgetting the destination, that rational intellect is not the pinnacle of development to set up shop and resist temptation of emotionalism. The intellect is actually a means to an end because it is incapable of eliciting a true spiritual bond with the objects of its thoughts. The intellect not only screens the superficial or deceptive emotions on the way to revealing emotional depth, but also refines motives in the search for interior of the heart, cleansing any seeking that's for the sake of accumulating experience or aggrandizing one's name. Thus, the intellectual activity turns us into an open vessel ready to contain the lights of the heart's interior. I'm going to read that part again. The intellect not only screens the superficial or deceptive emotions on the way to revealing emotional depth, but also refines motives in the search for interior of the heart, cleansing any seeking that's for the sake of accumulating experience or aggrandizing one's name. Thus, the intellectual activity turns us into an open vessel, ready to contain the lights of the heart's interior. Chassidus then takes us all further and adds in another dimension of the intellect, the interior. So we have the exterior of the heart, the exterior of the intellect, then we have the interior of the heart, and then we have the interior of the intellect. The exterior mind convinces itself that it doesn't like complicated concepts. It generalizes, it's lazy, it's superficial, it's reactive. The interior intellect is more subtle and deep and indescribable. It's said to be referenced by who is wise, he who sees what is born. That's from Tamid 32a. I'm going to read it again. The interior intellect is more subtle and deep and indescribable. It's said to be referenced by who is wise, he who sees what is born. Sees with the mind's eye the constant arising in the now, the newness, presence, beingness, existence, godliness, arriving, the dependence and relation of all to and on godliness. The interior heart feels the object of emotion truly, but the interior intellect feels the godliness within, beginning with a general sense of where things will lead and culminating in the attainment of actual prophecy. Conscious intellectual search for the divine spark and everything governs the interior heart's depth of emotion. So in other words, the beginning is in the end. So you have the emotions, the beginning, and it's a spark, right? Then you have it get cooled off and calm down in the mind, and then it gets heated up kind of in the heart, and then it goes and sparks in the mind. So the conscious intellectual search for that divine spark and everything governs the interior heart depth of emotion. So it goes from the outer heart to the outer mind, then to the inner heart, and that's why it goes from the inner heart before it goes to the inner mind. To elevate rationalism, exterior of intellect, it needs to pass through the interior of the heart, so that from a perceptive openness to connection, it can then be raised to bond and have intimacy with exaltedness and divinity. And I'm going to stop here and say that because this is the last video before the Sabbath Shabbos, I wish everybody who's watching this a happy Shabbos, a cozy Shabbos, a comfortable Shabbos with enough rest and settling in and growing where you're planted and seeing the beauty and healing to our parents and happiness to our parents, and trusting that they will be healthy and happy if we're like our happiness and our health could be similar. And eating well, sleeping well, trusting the immune system of the body, the waste processing of the body, and looking back gratefully and letting it go, and looking forward with a hope that is comfortable to stand on, not the sharp edge that could cut things. And to be connected to tolerance and patience and satisfaction and nourishment Amen. Trusting and further connecting with our intuition and our energy groundedness, and appreciating all the teachers and students, siblings and family members and experiences, and all. And feeling so taken care of and loved by God, and connecting with the numbers and the codes and all the interesting equations and chemistry, and seeing the ways in which people didn't tell us who we were. We already had decided, so we believed them. And not giving up on ourselves, starting new cycles, trusting ourselves and our abilities, and how we could manage and we can solve puzzles, problems, challenges. They're all coming for us to sort through, organize, try different approaches, use the skills and tools we have successfully, and to let everyone have their own karma, their own measure for measure. The exactness, people who dump things or made me carry, or dumped on me or you, and sending out anyone's stuff they tried to put in you through your left thumb toe, and any dark little tadpole sperm-like negative energies, getting rid of them, letting people choose life, and choosing life, not just letting people, choosing life, returning to health, and taking care of the inner child without blaming anyone. Amen.